Students, in lesson 5.7, we are going to be working on writing zeros in the dividend. And our essential question that was going to guide our learning for this lesson is, when do you write a zero in the dividend to find a quotient? So we are going to connect as we begin this lesson. When decimals are divided, the dividend may not have enough digits for you to complete the division. In these cases, you can write zeros to the right of the last digit. So I'm going to write down and underline to the right of the last digit in the dividend. So sometimes you might need to add more zeros in the dividend. So boys and girls, we're going to start here with the unlock the problem real world. The equivalent fractions show that writing zeros to the right of a decimal does not change the value. So what I'm going to do is underline does not change the value. So we have 90 and 8/10. And what we do is if we multiply 10 over 10, we get 8 times 10 equals 80, and 10 times 10 is equal to 100. So we have 90 and 80 hundredths, which is the same as 90 and 80 hundredths. It's like saying, boys and girls, $90.80 or $90.08. It's the same amount. So it says during a fundraising event, Adrian rode his bicycle 45 and 8/10 miles in 4 hours. Find his speed in miles per hour by dividing the distance by the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the distance divided by the time, and we're going to figure out his rate, or we can also think of that as his speed. So what we're going to do is we're going to estimate. So what we can do, notice here, boys and girls, we're going to estimate to the nearest ones digit, and we see that we look next door. We see that it's an 8, and we can round that up, but we know that 4, we're going to be looking for the multiples of 4. We know that 44 is a multiple of 4, which is easily divisible by 4, which would give us 11. So what we're going to do is we're going to start dividing. So step 1, it says, write the decimal point in the quotient above the decimal. So what we're going to do is we're going to write that decimal right above, just to make sure that we're ready for it. Now, step 2, it says divide the tens, the ones, and then the tenths. So when we see here, we have, does McDonald's serve burgers? That's just something we want to keep in mind and helping us create the process and make sure we go through all the steps. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. Multiply. 1 times 4 is 4. Subtract. 4 minus 4 is 0. Regroup or bring down the 5. And then we begin again. 5 divided by 4 is 1. 1 times 4 is 4. Subtract. 5 minus 4 is 1. Bring down or regroup. We have 18. Now, boys and girls, we wrote the decimal point in the quotient just because we didn't want to forget it. 18 divided by 4 is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 18 minus 16 is 2. So what you see in this case, boys and girls, is that we cannot finish this problem and there is not enough digits here. So this is where we can add a 0 in the dividend and continue dividing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write our first initial answer that we have figured out so far. And we had that 2 left over, and we regrouped this and we brought the 0 down, and now we have 20. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 5 times 4 is 20. 20 minus 20 is 0. So remember, boys and girls, we can't just walk away because we know that we have to add a 0 in our dividend and continue to divide. So Adrian's speed was 11 and 45 hundredths miles per hour. Next, it says connect. When you divide whole numbers, you can show the amount that is left over by writing the remainder as a fraction. By writing zeros in the dividend, you can also show the amount as a decimal. So what we're going to do, boys and girls, is we're going to start with the example. It says write zeros in the dividend. So divide 372 divided by 15. So it says divide until you have an amount less than the divisor left over. So what we can see is we did 37 divided by 15 is 2. 2 times 15 is 30. 37 minus 30 is 7. We regroup the 2. 72. 72 divided by 15 is 4. 4 times 15 is 60. 72 minus 60 would give us 12. And in this case, we would see that we divided until the amount is less than the divisor. 12 is less than 15. So now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to add a decimal point and now add a 0. And now we're going to bring it down when we have 120. We know it's not really 120, but what we did was we inserted the decimal point and a 0 at the end of our dividend, and now we're going to place the decimal point in our quotient. And now we can continue dividing. 120 divided by 15 is 8. 8 times 15 is 120. 120 minus 120 is nothing. So now we have our answer here, which is 24 and 8/10. So remember, sometimes you can add a decimal point and a 0 in the dividend, and you can write your remainder as a decimal or as a fraction. Now we're going to go on to our next problem where it says Sarah has 78 ounces of rice. She puts an equal amount of rice in each of 12 bags. What amount of rice does she put in each bag? How would you explain and write your answer using a decimal? So what we would know, boys and girls, is that we would say, well, she has 78 ounces and she has 12 bags. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to solve this problem to help us with this. So what we say is 78 divided by 12 is 6. Again, 6 times 12 is 72. And now what we do is we have 78 minus 72 is 6. Now this is a remainder. Normally we could put remainder 6, but in this case we want to use a decimal. So we would add a decimal point in the dividend, add a 0, add a decimal point in the quotient, and then bring it down. So now we have 60 divided by 12. Well, we know 60 divided by 12 is 5, and 5 times 12 is 60. So we have 0 left over. So what we would say is that 6 5/10 ounces is our answer, and we could say the amount left over is 6. So I would write the decimal point and zeros after the 8 in the dividend. And divide 60 by 12. And in that case, we wrote a remainder as a decimal, which is what it was asking us to do. Now it says, try this, divide. Write a 0 at the end of the dividend as needed. So right off the back, remember, we need to multiply our divisor by a power of 10. That would make it a whole number. So we're going to do that in both cases, to the divisor and the dividend. So now we have 123 divided by 6, which would give us 12 divided by 6 is 2. 2 times 6 is 12. Regroup, bring down the 3. Now, in this case, we need to add a decimal point and a 0, and we bring that down, and we will have a 30 then. 30 divided by 6 is 5. Sorry, we're writing a remainder. 5 times 6 is 30 and nothing left over. So in the past, we would write remainder, but we're not going to write remainder. We're going to write our remainder as a decimal. Now again, we're going to circle our divisor. We're going to see that we have to multiply this by 10 because we want to make sure that our divisor is never a decimal. So now we have 100 divided by 8. We can do that for sure. So 100 divided by 8 is 12. 12 times 8 is 96. 100 minus 96 is 4. Now we added a 0 and we bring it down. Make sure you add the decimal point in the quotient as well. Now we have 40 divided by 8, and that is, we have 40 divided by 8, and that is 5. 5 times 8 is 40, and there's no remainder left, so our answer would be 12 and 5/10.